With infinite complacence, people went to and fro over the earth about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their dominion over this small, spinning fragment of solar driftwood, which by chance or design man has inherited out of the dark mystery of time and space.
Hello everyone. I am very behind in my reading and welcoming new Patreon members, so here we go. Monica, Kent Nielsen, Bernadette Ronayne, Larry Compton, Mirko Mariani, Pam Struck, Captain Trips, Lauren G, Brandon Zuspan, Alex A. Christoph, Bob Lubin, Russ Rouse, Holly Evans Gray, Sophie Hayward, Jared Wunsch, Jarrett Gordon, Kevin Wheatley, Jason Lilly, Charles Smoke, Anne Marie O'Malley, Joel Suter, Irene Mock, Brian White, Scott, Andre DeSantos, Sandra Thompson, Shelley C., Chris Cataldi, Barbara Margosiak, DKP, Jeffrey Wilson Messner, Leslie Masson, Jessica Zebarth, Lauren Dryad, Adam Downing, Dave Baxter, Teresa, Diane Bogdan, Kristen, Nicholas Vaughan, Dana, SC Slim Boy, John Hunsberger, and Julia Stopa. Welcome aboard, guys. Hope you're all enjoying it so far. A few of the latest Patreon-only episodes include the very first episode of Odd and Obscure with JP, where John Paul Capice, MTS, and I discussed strange things of all sorts falling from the sky. That was a live video chat that he and I executed. Much more of those to come. Also, the very first edition of Unraveled, Murder and the Missing. And edition 1 was titled Gacy Visits, where I interviewed James, who visited with John Wayne Gacy 11 different times while John was imprisoned and on death row. He gave a lot of insight, not only into the mind of John Wayne Gacy himself, but a lot of detail about what went down during those conversations. Another upcoming show for patrons only, besides Odd and Obscure with JP and Unraveled, includes Return to the Fray, where past ITF guests come back. We discuss what's gone on since they've been on. Has their minds been changed about their experience or experiences? And I'm coming out of the gate with a bang on this one because I'm having David from ITF 06 Boundaries Crossed come back on, because he even admits he thinks about Bigfoot even a little bit differently than he did then, way back on episode 6. Return to the Fray is going to be an interactive live chat. It's not just me interviewing him. It will be me plus any patrons that happen to want to join in. So, if you are interested in joining us on Patreon, head to any of my social media outlets, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and click on the Linktree link in my bio. That will take you to Patreon or, of course, Apple Podcasts. But like I said before, Apple Podcasts, it's just an audio medium. So you will get the audio from the videos, of course. But if you want to see our mugs, then head on over to Patreon. And, of course, that will also allow you to join in on the interactive live chats. So Linktree link or Patreon specific is patreon.com/intothefray, or head right to Apple Podcasts and hit subscribe. A big thanks to all of my members. You help to keep the lights on for ITF. And without further ado, let's get to this week's episode. From the email, I know that we're somewhere around the same age, and all of this started at quite a young age for you, right? And can we start by saying that you're okay giving some locations out? So let's start with where you are, and then we will go into where you were at the age of 4 or 5 when all this began.
So I'm in southern Ontario in Canada. Specifically right now I live in a small town called Orangeville. But where I lived as a child was in King Township, York Region, in a little village. Technically, it's a hamlet called Kettleby. I lived at my dad's house. It was our family home when I was a kid. It's still my dad's house now.
Now, is that a small town?
It's a very small town. Like people that live around there, like they call it the village, but by definition, it's not even big enough to be a village. So there's maybe 200 or 300 people that live in the actual village itself.
Yeah, so it looks like at the age of 4 or 5, some strange things began to happen. So, do you feel like, and you're not going to know the answer to this, but do you feel like, oh, there probably was some stuff before, maybe I blocked it out, or do you really feel like this was the beginning of everything for you? Or also, do you recall your family ever talking about strange things that could maybe implant thoughts in your mind?
Not really. Like I've tried to think of that, like what could get me onto those things, but honestly, at the time, like at the age of 4 or 5, I didn't think there was anything paranormal or like I didn't think anything like that. I just thought it was like something strange that had happened to me. So what it was this, I guess I would have noticed it the second time, but it was a recurring dream. I'd had the exact same dream twice. And in this dream, I was falling, kind of like in a tunnel. It reminded me of like the Alice in Wonderland when she tumbles down the tunnel, but sort of falling down this tunnel in blackness. And then at the very bottom, I'd stopped free fall, and it was like I did like a little floating leaf kind of thing, and I floated into my bed, literally under the covers into my bed, and that's when I woke up. So I had this dream twice, and I thought that was the weirdest thing. Like I'd heard of a recurring dream before, like in TV shows and stuff, but I didn't like it never really crossed my mind that that was a thing other than in kind of pop culture. So I asked my mom. I said I had this dream 2 times, and I explained it to her, and she kind of like just brushed me off like that's weird, but that was a dream. That was really all I'd thought of it for years. And like I said, it didn't seem paranormal, but later on in life, like more recently actually, where I've been learning about the abduction phenomena and stuff like that, all these small things that didn't seem important at the time are kind of like falling in place and painting sort of a picture that's a little bit worrying.
Yeah, and in your email, you really went in sequential order, which is wonderful. I do like that because I think sometimes that can paint a picture as far as, do things amp up in a certain way or for a certain reason? And that will come into play just a few years after that, right? But the next thing
Yeah,
that you brought up was something kind of strange and interesting, and probably very unique to what would be termed a smaller town, and that's in 19 you say 90-ish, because who can really remember
yeah,
exact
yeah,
years for stuff like this. But you said you saw a poster on a local bulletin board at a gas station seeking
yeah,
witnesses to a UFO that had
yeah.
recently been seen. I thought that was so cool.
I know, and I've like the one and only time in my life, I think it was the gas station that my grandmother worked at that was, just in the next town over. And I remember seeing this, one of those like, with the little phone numbers snipped at the bottom, tear one off kind of thing. And I remember reading this, and I was like kindergarten age. So like my reading wasn't great, but I got the gist of what this thing was saying. And I asked my mom, I was like, check this out. Like people saw a UFO. And my mom says, no, no, that's just, people say things like that. It's probably just a hoax. And I remember specifically this interaction because I was like, what? Like, I'd never heard that word before. I was like, what's a hoax? And she explained it to me. And I was like, oh, okay, gotcha. And that was kind of all I really thought of it. But always in the back of my mind, it was there that somebody around there claimed to have seen something around that time. So it just seemed very strange. But yeah, like it was like everything brushed off. It's just you don't want whether your mom believes it or not. She doesn't want you worrying and thinking scary things. So she brushed it off, and that was that.
Right. And then the very next thing that you mentioned was your grandmother showing you one of the Time Life books, which I happen to have just a few of these, and that's one of them. And that is the UFO Phenomenon Edition. And it's this very classic saucer looking UFO, but it's almost lit up, and then everything underneath it is lit up. And you said that you had a very similar reaction to that a lot of people do when and I've heard this several times, even on just my show. So if you can count up how many times people have said it just over the years on any show or book or whatever, but Whitley Strieber's Communion, the classic quote unquote gray alien, if you will, got a lot of reaction out of people. So this is probably when maybe you are starting to think, why am I having a reaction to this? What about what happened in my bed? Maybe this is when you started to think other things were going on, or not yet?
Not even yet. So that, yeah, like I said, I've been into that stuff. Like my grandmother would show me. That's like my favorite book of all time. And I don't have my copy anymore. I wish I did, but it was absolutely my favorite book to ever look through. Yeah, like I was just amazed with everything. Like the tomato man. It's so cool. All those things. I loved it. But there's a full page. It's like a pencil sketch, full page drawing of this alien's face, and I just remember it being wrinkled. And like when we'd flip through the pages and read it, she'd get to that page, and I was just like, no, like as quick as I could, flip to the next page. Or if we were getting to that page, like I'd recognize, okay, we're getting close to that part in the book. So I'd start flipping the corners of the page to the next ones ahead, like to kind of find it, so that when we'd get to that page, I could flip directly past it. And it was this wrinkled faced alien being. Like it was just like a headshot kind of the face. And I just remember like I absolutely hated it for some reason, and nothing else to do with aliens or UFOs or anything like that ever freaked me out. Just this one specific picture. So earlier this year, I was thinking about it. I was like, damn, I don't have that book anymore. So just on a hope, I Googled wrinkled faced alien sketch, and like in the first few images, it came up, and I looked at it, and I just had this like, oh, like there it is again. Oh God. So I clicked on it, and I'm reading the story. So the sketch itself was from Betty Hill's description that she gave under hypnosis. Like an artist drew a sketch of what she described while she was doing the hypnotic regression, and this was one of the ones from the Hill abduction. And that was like a big thing in my mind, and that was only a couple of years ago that I put that together. But that one, and then like with everybody's the so-called communion reaction, I've looked at the communion cover, and it doesn't give me the heebie-jeebies like that Betty Hill sketch does. But yeah, one of the most famous abductions of all time, and that I can't even look at it. I hate it.
And that one, and yeah, I was Googling just to pull it up again as you were talking, and it doesn't actually really look anything like the classic or the communion. It's way worse, to be honest with you.
It is.
The eyes aren't even level with each other. The eyes look nothing like the quote unquote classic gray alien, and I don't even know what's going on with the nose and the mouth, but it's very, very unique.
It's friggin' horrific.
Yeah, it is. So isn't that funny though, Chris, that it's, and I'm not saying it's funny that you're horrified by that
No.
sketch or anything, but
I'm not so horrified by it now. It's like, ugh, it gives me that kind of memory.
The creeps, yeah. But you say that that's one of your that was, at least it was. I don't know if it still is, but it was one of your favorite books. But yet also, it contained this horrific, right? Like it contained this horrific image that you try to skip every time.
Yeah. So other than one page, it's my favorite book ever.
You're like, if I could get a hold of each one of those copies and rip that page out, that would be ideal.
I don't know if other people have the same reaction to that one. It seems like the communion cover is so common, but like when I heard that, through listening to podcasts and other people's firsthand accounts, when I heard about, that people see this communion cover, and I was like, oh my God, that's exactly how I felt with this other one. And then finding out it was from the Hill case, I was like, oh my God, that doesn't make me feel any better about this.
Yeah. I don't blame you. I'm not sure why you would have such a reaction to that very specific sketch, because in that book, I believe there's other quote unquote images or sketches of aliens, right?
It was only ever that one.
Yeah, so that is weird. Probably doesn't make you feel that great. Okay, so next up, we're going to talk, and again, this could all be tied in, but we're going to talk a little bit about what we're going to term sleep paralysis, right?
Yep. Yep. So I'm thinking I was around like 8, 9, 10. I don't remember because none of these things seemed noteworthy at the time. It was just things that happened to you, right? So I remember having this sleep paralysis. I didn't know what it was at the time. So when I had the dream of falling and landing in my bed, that was I had a downstairs bedroom, like main floor bedroom in my dad's house. And since then, I had moved to the upstairs loft bedroom, which had a skylight. And I loved having my bed below the skylight because you could see out at night. But now I also question, why did I want to have the bed below the skylight? So I would have this sleep paralysis that I didn't know what it was, but I'd wake up and I'd feel like I was floating off the bed, and like my eyes could move and I could think and I could process things and I could see around the room, but I couldn't move, and it felt like I was floating off my bed. And I never felt like I was being held down. I never saw any entities or shadows or things like that that people sometimes do. I never had that, just this distinct feeling of floating. And when I think back to it, it always feels like I was floating, like lying on my back and floating upwards, which seems strange because as a kid, I never slept on my back. I was always a side sleeper. But the feeling I got when I did this floating was always on my back. So I'd kind of like, it happened and I didn't know what was going on. And I sort of freaked out a little bit and I fought against it. And after a few seconds or so, it felt like I'd broken free and I was awake and I was in my bed and I was kind of like my heart was going and I think after the first time this happened, again, I'd go to my mom. I had this weird thing. Like I don't remember. I kind of just remember her brushing it off, saying, that's weird, whatever. And I would tell her it would happen again and again. And it felt like I was frozen in a block of ice, is what I said, and I would fight against it. And I would break free, and like I broke out of the ice block and be in my bed, awake and like heart pounding, out of breath, kind of shook up every time. And this would happen off and on for years. And sometimes it would be like nightly. Sometimes there would be weeks in between, or maybe even months in between, but it happened regularly for 2, 3, maybe even 4 years. Like it happened a lot between the ages of, I'm going to say 8 to 12 kind of thing. And then it sort of didn't happen for quite a while. And I'm pretty sure I just started high school, so like 13 years old. And I remember it happening again. And I felt like I was floating up out of my bed and I freaked out a little bit and I fought against it and I broke free. I was all shooken up that, it hadn't happened in so long. It was kind of strange that all of a sudden it did again. So I remember having this kind of thought in my head, why do I fight against it? Like I don't think it's anything real. Like it's just my mind thinks I'm floating. So I convinced myself that the next time that this happens, I'm just going to roll with it and I'm going to let myself float up off my bed and see what happens. Will I float through the ceiling? Will I float out the door? I'm just gonna let it do its thing and not fight against it. And after making that like mental decision in my head that I would never fight it again, it has never happened to me again for that was 25 years ago. It's never happened to me since.
That's so weird, and that's a good PSA for anybody that's suffering from that. I would say at least give that a shot, right?
And so something to do with the sleep paralysis. So when I learned the term sleep paralysis was sometime, I think towards when this had first started happening to me. When I was a kid, we didn't have cable TV or anything. We had 3 TV channels, and we weren't allowed to have a TV in our bedroom, stuff like that. My big entertainment, my big sneaky thing was I had a clock radio, and I could listen to like radio really quiet late at night because I had trouble sleeping when I was a kid. So I'd stay up late and I'd listen to the radio. And I'm not sure how, but I got listening to AM stations flipping through, and I found this like a call-in radio show from a Toronto radio station, and it was on like a paranormal UFO related call-in show with these two guys that hosted it. And I'd listened to this, and it was through this show, like people were calling in and talking about sleep paralysis. And I was like, well, I think that's what I'm getting. And I kind of pieced it together, and I was like, that's what this is. And some people are saying that they think they're abducted by aliens. Like I never really thought that. I just think this is some sort of a brain thing or a body thing. Like I don't know. I don't see aliens and shit. Other people claim to, but so that was just how I was introduced to the sleep paralysis phenomena or whatever you want to call it, was through this radio show just by pure coincidence, by finding a radio show on AM radio because I can't sleep. And this is the subject matter while I'm having sleep paralysis. So strange. And then, so that was, geez, like I was a kid, that was 30 years ago. And just recently, I was like, I wonder whatever happened to that old radio program. It was called Strange Days or Strange Days Indeed, Strange Days, one or the other. And it was hosted by these two fellas. I think it was Bruce Carroll or Bill Carroll and Harold Bruce Knapp, I believe were their names. So I Googled this radio show and I could find like zero trace of it on the internet whatsoever. I remember what station it was on. I kind of remembered the guys' names. I couldn't find any trace of this radio show. And then that was maybe a year and a half or 2 years ago that I looked for that. And that's kind of strange, but I guess, maybe it's fallen into obscurity. Toronto AM radio show from 30 years ago. And then about 6 months after I Googled this show and found nothing, there was like a little news snippet on our 24-hour news channel here. Like my wife and I just have it on the TV in the daytime. And I happened to read this little news blurb that this guy, Bill Carroll, former CFRB radio host, has passed away at age whatever. And I was like, that's the guy from the Strange Days show. So I Googled it and I got all this stuff about Bill Carroll and all the radio shows he did. Host of paranormal show, Strange Days. I'm like, how come there was nothing about this when I searched for it 6 months ago? And then like learning about Mandela effects and stuff. I was like, this seems like almost like a backwards Mandela effect.
Yeah, that's super weird. And it's strange that you wouldn't be able to find very much information about it online when you really, really were trying to find it.
I was trying, and I think I even tried more than once. And then, yeah, after the news blurb that one of the hosts had died, there was a whole bunch of stuff about it. Well, that's weird, but maybe I Googled it wrong. I don't know.
Do you remember if they were actually, was the term sleep paralysis out at the time that they were talking
It
about it?
was, yeah, it was.
Okay. I mean, that's helpful, at least to hear that other people are going through it, right? When
It
you were
really
listening at
was
that
because
time.
it made me, like I was a kid, but sometimes you question, like, am I crazy? Am I a crazy person right now? Do other people think these things? So, but yeah, to hear that other people had experienced this, like seemingly normal sounding adults, it made me feel a little bit better about it, I guess.
Well, up next, we're going to talk about a pallet factory. And honestly, this is a really quick one, but it gave me the chills.
Yeah. So I think about the age of 13 or 14, a friend had stayed overnight at my house, and I think we asked my parents if we could camp in the tent in the backyard, which was really just a clever way of us sneaking away from the house in the middle of the night. So where we lived, it was fairly rural. Like we didn't have sidewalks and stuff, but just up the road from my dad's house was the elementary school that I went to, and we could go up there and skateboard and stuff because they had pavement. But on the way, like past my dad's house, you walk past, there's a church, and at the time it was a pallet factory. So we were walking up the road in the dark past this pallet factory, and we're looking, and it had these windows that were kind of up high on the building, smaller windows, but up towards the ceiling height of the building, not down on the lower part of the wall. So like I'm gonna say the roof of this building was like 30 feet high, and these were 4 by 6 foot windows up towards the top of the walls. Like you can see the rafters. through the window. So we were walking along, and I was looking at this place because the lights are on inside, and it looked like kind of like the shape of a person hanging from the rafters. Like it looked like a shop coat, like a person with a shop coat on, hanging from the rafters. And I said to my buddy, I was like, "Look at that! What is that?" It looks like a guy hanging from a meat hook because we knew that it used to be a meat packing plant. It looks like a person hanging from a meat hook up in the rafters of the building. I'm like, "Oh, that's so weird." Like, I don't know, we were 30 or 40 feet from the building, but you could see inside. I'm like, what the heck is that? So weird and creepy. But we don't know what it was. You couldn't see any detail, just the kind of form of a person. Went off into the night and did our skateboarding and all that. And years later, I'd mentioned something to my dad about, one time at night, I saw this creepy thing in the pallet factory over there. He's like, "Oh yeah, he said, "That's weird." He said, "I was talking to a guy that works there, and he said apparently when it was the meat packing plant way back, the guy that owned the meat pack apparently hung himself in the building there." I was like, "Huh." And my dad's like, he's like, "Well, that's pretty weird, isn't it?" I was like, "Oh, what did we see?" So I looked again, like, I've looked through those windows since, like, it was not a couple of years after, but I looked and whatever was up there wasn't there anymore. So I don't know.
Yeah, that gave me the creeps because I don't care what age you are, nobody wants to see that.
No. So the angle that we were at, it looked like a person hanging, like we would have been looking at their back. So you didn't see a face or anything like that. It just looked like a body hanging with the back facing the window that we could see through.
But you kind of mentioned it looked like not as if he was hanging by the neck, but almost as if he was
I,
placed on a meat hook.
that's what I said. Yeah, by a meat hook.
Ugh.
Like it wasn't. Yeah, like not by a noose. Like it wasn't hanging by a piece of rope to the neck. But yeah, it looked like as if like those big hooks that they throw like beef halves
Oh
on.
yeah. Mm.
Something like that. If you hooked a person up onto one of those hooks,
That's some
that,
straight mob stuff right there. Maybe they went north and visited you guys there. I don't know.
it wasn't
That's
suicide.
yeah. I don't know how you get yourself up on a meat hook, but holy crap. Yeah, that one gave me the chills. I'm like, that's not fun to see.
Yeah, but so when I saw that, it was no longer even the meat packers. Like it was a
Right.
pallet factory at the time. So I don't know. In my mind, I was like, oh, maybe if they used that kind of stuff, if that kind of equipment was in the building, maybe it's still up there. Like, I have no idea.
Right, like
Yeah,
they just left it. Like why take it down?
yeah, yeah. Why take it down if you're just going to build pallets? Doesn't matter
Right.
what in the rafters. It's like maybe they're
Probably would
in.
take a body down, but hey, you never know. I don't know.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm thinking it wasn't actually a fleshy, meaty body, but it was, maybe some sort of a residual thing is the way
Right.
I took it. Yeah.
Yeah. Still super creepy. Yeah, the second you said meat hook, I'm like, wait a second, a meat hook. Because I just in my mind I saw the whole like, the neck to the side, the noose and but meat hook adds another layer. That one. I like it.
Yeah, it just makes it even worse.
I just think of the scene from Goodfellas for that one. The guy in the he's from Wedding Singer and he was also in Goodfellas and he ended up in the cooler truck.
Yep.
But yeah, I forget his character's name. Anyway, okay, so and I don't want to get too much out of sequential order because, as I said, I do like going in that order. And besides, your email is set up so nicely. But the next thing that you mentioned from Kettleby is these mild psychic abilities, except that I will say from reading the email that it sounds like you have more than mild, might I say, Chris, psychic abilities. But if you want to be modest, that's okay. But obviously, right here, you wanted to just mention a couple of things that maybe prior to some of the bigger things was going on, right?
It's like when I was a kid, like I would just notice coincidences. Like I would think something and that would happen. Or, there'd be a contest or a hockey game or something like that. And I would just think of the outcome and then that would happen. And it was just, like coincidences, but coincidences that happen all the time. When I was a kid, I remember thinking like, I wonder if I'm psychic. And I was like, no, that's silly. Like I believed that it was a thing. I believed that other people were psychic, but I could never believe that I could be. It's like, no, it's just coincidences. You just stop kidding yourself. Which is over my life, I've noticed more and more of these things happening. Like I mentioned, I call it the cop radar. So I'll be driving, and like we, I think we all do it. Drive a little too fast sometimes, and every once in a while, I'll get this kind of notion in my head: I'm driving too fast. Chill out. What if there's a cop up there? And I'll slow down, and I shit you not, within 2 minutes, there will be a cop up the road doing radar, or I'll pass one oncoming all the friggin' time. But it's not like, I guess it's pretty convenient, but it's not like it's none of this is anything that I can control. I'm just learning recently to listen to these things. And it's not like every time there's a cop doing radar, I'll think there's a cop there. Not at all. But when I get these notions that something's going to happen or something's going to be there like a cop, I've got to pay attention to them, because more often than not, like with the cop thing, if I think there's a cop up the road, almost 100% of the time, I'm right for some reason, which is good because
Very
nobody
helpful.
needs. It's oh yeah,
Yeah, and at least here in the states, I'm sure cops everywhere don't appreciate these devices. But I've heard that if you get pulled over and they see the radar detector, that when they might have let you off, well, they're not going to do it now because look at you trying to beat the system, and it pisses them off, which I totally understand.
pretty sure radar detectors are illegal here where I live,
Oh,
and I've
really?
actually I don't know if it's true. I've heard of radar detector detectors. I don't know if that's an urban legend, but
Probably is a thing.
I've heard of, yeah, I don't know. I don't know too much about technology, and I don't want to chance it. The cops have better resources than we do.
Well, you have a built-in radar detector anyway, so
I'll take that. I'll
uh,
take that any day. Anyway, just to, you shouldn't drive fast. Let's just say that.
yeah.
Wear your seatbelts and drive responsibly.
All right, well, let's talk about what the hell is with this cat, right?
So the cat in my dad's house in Kettleby. So when we were kids, the cat's bed and litter box and food. The cat's whole setup was in the laundry room, which was kind of like a mudroom breezeway sort of thing. And there was a passage door from the breezeway into the kitchen area. And sometimes, like, we'd be in the living room, like the whole family would be in the living room or in the kitchen, whatever. And you would hear the doorknob like click open, and the door would kind of creak open, and the cat would push her way through. And we all just thought, we're like, oh my God, the cat's so talented. She can open the door. That's so clever. And then we just thought that for years. And it was recently when I was going through all these weird things in my life. It's like, how did that cat open that door? So in my mind, she had an enclosed litter box, and it was kind of near this door. And I thought, oh, maybe if she were to climb up on top of it and she were to kind of paw her way up the wall, she could get at the knob and turn it. But if she even could do that, she would have to turn the knob and pull it towards her. It wasn't a push, it was a pull. And I was like, wait, that cat couldn't have done that. She was a small cat. I don't even think she'd be able to reach if she did stand up like that. And it was like a brass, like a round doorknob, not even a lever type doorknob or anything, just a regular doorknob. There's no way that cat did that. And we just thought for years that she could. So that's physically impossible, but it would happen all the time.
So is this the same house then that the next thing you mentioned about what went down with your sister?
It is the
Uh,
same
oh,
house.
okay. Okay. Yeah. Well,
And
then this might be a good tie-in, right?
so, and my sister gave me permission to use this story. So this was, I believe this was about 10 years ago, and she was staying at my dad's house, and she was in bed, and she felt like an invisible, like a hand held her head, pushed her head down in the pillow of her bed and like held her down. And she said she heard some whispering, like something was whispered in her ear, but she couldn't tell what it was, like what it said or what the voice sounded like. But something physically held her down to her pillow. And I asked her about it yesterday. I texted her just to double check it was okay that I told her story. And she said, yeah, for sure. She said that was legit the creepiest thing that has ever happened to me.
That's a whole lot of nope right there. Having your
Oh
head
yeah.
held down and then actually hearing wisp. Because to her, she probably thinks someone broke in. Like, I mean, what
I,
else do you think?
I don't know what you would think exactly. And so like I can't think of any specific things, but like when I was a kid, like you'd hear a creepy noise or something, or you'd see a shadow. And I, my mom would say, like, my dad's house was brand new. We were the first people to live there. It was built in '89. And my mom would be like, it's a new house. Like, new houses aren't haunted. Nobody's ever died here, and you're like, okay, fair enough. As a kid, that made sense. Gotcha. Ghosts are only dead people, because that's what we thought then. But, now the theories that we have, like ghosts are not always just dead people. And just because a house is new does not mean that things didn't happen on that land before. So this little village of Kettleby, it's actually got over 200 years of history just of European people being there. And before that, it was native, like indigenous land. It was, there's a trail there. It's called the Toronto Carrying Place. So it was way back, the, the large body of water to the north. The shoreline used to be very close to where my dad's house is. And with the curve of that body of water and the curve of Lake Ontario, I'm pretty sure between where my dad's house is and Lake Ontario, like it's the shortest straight line portage to get from one body of water to the next. So like native people used it as a portage for hundreds or thousands of years even. So there have been people there for a long, long time.
Yeah, so goodness knows what went down on the land before they put the house up.
Who knows? There's a house. I was doing some reading the other day. There's a house that still exists in the village of Kettleby that was built in 1802, but then was abandoned for 20 some years because it was too remote. It was too hard to get out to. So they stopped using this house. And then by the 1840s, it was lived in and used again by, like, I think it was the guy that founded the village, lived there. But, over 200 years, this one building's been there. And it's a quarter mile or a half a mile from my dad's house.
Now, did your sister tell your parents about this incident?
I don't think so. Like I said, this is about 10 years ago. So she was in her 20s. And I think she was just staying over at my dad's house one night. So I don't know if she mentioned it to him or not. But she told me, I was kind of telling her some of the weird things that I've experienced. Actually, I was wondering if she'd ever experienced sleep paralysis or anything like that in dad's house. And she said, no, I've never had anything like that. But this happened. So, oh, very, very interesting.
Did she stay with friends after this when she came to town?
No, I think she's stayed there since.
Yeah,
It's
that
I guess it was just a one-off kind of thing there.
right.
I'd never had anything like that happen, and other than the door opening for the cat, I can't think of any other poltergeist type things that I ever remember there. Like I lived there from the age of 4 till 17.
I mean, I've heard of grabbing ankles or calves or an arm, the whole adage of don't let your limbs hang over the bed kind of a joke, which isn't really that funny. You just don't do
Yeah,
it. Everyone knows.
that
But to have your head held down, that is very aggressive and invasive.
yeah, and to have something whispered like, "Oh my God," I don't know what I would think.
Did she expand upon the wisp? It sounds as if it was unintelligible, essentially. I'm sure she
Yeah,
would have mentioned, right?
that's as far as I know. Yeah, it was just
Yeah.
unintelligible, too quiet
Ugh.
or whatever.
That's just so nope.
Yeah, regardless of what it was. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No thanks. Tell your sister I'm sorry about that one because I'd be toast.
Yeah, I will do.
All right, so this next one, I was like, what? The neighbors down the road. Let's talk about what in the actual heck this could be.
So, yeah, this is just down the road, and this is just on the edge of the village of Kettleby. And so, bear in mind, this is an unsubstantiated report from one kindergarten kid to another. But these people down the road, they had a little farm, and they had like a few head of cattle. And I was friends with their son, he was the same age as me, in kindergarten, and we were out kind of like hanging out, playing outside around the barn one day. And he told me that one time his uncle had been out in the barn. I think it was early in the morning. His uncle had been out in the barn, and a wolf came up in the barnyard, and it had a sheep's skin over its back, like Little Red Riding Hood style, but in real life. And I was actually just thinking about this, racking my brain about this kid's story, and I want to say that in the story it had the obligatory glowing red eyes, but I can't 100% remember if he gave me that detail or not. But
Mm.
it was according to his uncle telling me, it was a wolf in sheep's clothing.
I love that one. I just
I
think
never,
of maybe some kind of a skinwalker or something. You know, it's
I thought as a kid, like it just seemed like demonic to me, almost something like that. I'd never heard of. Yeah, Skinwalker. That makes even more sense. And like being indigenous land, like I'm sure that there's all sorts of spirits that were around in those areas. Like it's a really wooded area too, like very foresty area. God knows what kind of elementals or wood spirits could be around there.
yeah. I mean, talking about taking a cliche to the max, right? You
It's
literally have a wolf in sheep's clothing.
and it sounds so cliche and made up, and that's kind of, as a kid it scared the crap out of me. Then as I got older I was like, nah, that couldn't be true. But now, you know what, it seems so cliche that that is
R-
something that the phenomena would do to you.
right,
It sounds so made up that nobody would ever believe you.
right. Oh yeah, what's next here? We got some lights, right, out in a building somewhere.
So some neighbors up the road, I'd been out snowmobiling one day with them, and there's this little outbuilding in one of the farm fields. I'm not sure if it was a house or exactly what it was. It's very small. Like if it was a house, it was a one-room shack kind of thing. And I remember this lady, she's like my parents' age, telling me that her husband would see like lights inside this building sometimes in the middle of the night. Not to say that people couldn't have been out there, but it is highly unlikely that people were out in this field, in this outbuilding, in the middle of the night. It's a creepy thing, but you kind of leave it at that. But then hearing so many stories of, things like Brown Mountain lights and spook lights and Min Min lights, I'm like, oh shit, what was that then?
See, but even if it was people, that's creepy too. Nobody wants just randos in some abandoned building. What are they doing out there?
They're like, it's not impossible, but it's completely improbable that people would be out there. I don't know. That's a first-hand account of a first-hand account.
All right. Well, I just want to ask the listeners right now: have y'all ever heard of a squeever? Because you're about to.
Yeah, we may have a new cryptid.
You
Um,
betcha.
so this is something when I was a teenager, a couple of kids that I was friends with from the next little town over, we were like hanging out one day, just doing whatever, biking around or whatever, and the one kid said to the other kid, he's like, "Hey, remember the squeever?" And I was like, What's a squeever?" So they said, we were down the end of this road here once, four wheeling. I think it was these two guys and a third guy. I can't remember who, but three of them were out on four wheelers, and they saw they said an animal, something that was upright, the size of a man, but it looked like a squirrel with the face of a beaver. So they called it the squeever. I was like, what the hell? And they're like, and this is again two 17-year-old kids telling another 17-year-old kid, but like I'd known both of these guys almost my whole life up until that point. It didn't seem like a tall tale or like they were yanking my chain or anything like that. Like it seemed like they were seriously like telling me, we saw this thing, it was weird, we don't know what it was. And if it was just a misidentification, it could have been a black bear. I believe they said it was brown, but it could have been a black bear. But black bears are seriously rare around there, and if there is one around, it gets spotted. Like they get into stuff. People see them. So I highly doubt that it was, but I kind of always just I laughed at that, the squeever, every time I drive past this road because I work in that area still on the weekends. I drove past there today and I kind of chuckled to myself, squeever. Again, it was something I was told, but then listening to an episode of yours a couple of weeks ago, I was listening to an older episode with T.W. Watson, and he was talking about things in Canada, and he was talking about this area and 6 foot tall beavers.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, no effing shit. I was like, it's a squeever,
You
actually.
got to get a hold of the friends and say, listen, maybe you're not nuts that I thought you were all these years.
I took them at face value. I didn't think they were hitting me, but at the same time, a man squirrel beaver, like it just makes me think of that man bear pig,
Remember,
man
yeah.
squirrel beaver.
Yeah.
And then yeah, when I heard that 6 foot tall beavers, indigenous lore about 6 foot tall beavers, I was like, no way.
Yeah, that's in W.T. Watson's Canadian Monsters and Mysteries. But here's the thing, and you kind of already said this, but I mean, to take a beaver and a squirrel and mix those two things and make it the size of a man and it's walking upright. I mean, they could have just said they saw Bigfoot or something,
Like, yeah, that would have been a more unbelievable story than making something like that up. Exactly.
Yeah, see, there are actual tie-ins to other stories, so it kind of makes you go,
All these things that like these things, like they seem mildly paranormal at the time at best, and
right.
then later you look back on this big picture and you hear things that other people say, you're like, what the heck's actually going on here?
Right. That's why, those of us that talk about Bigfoot or Mothman or lizard, whatever, where's the line blurred? What's too weird? Why is this okay
Yeah,
over here, but this is not acceptable over here? And as you say, all they could term it was a squeever because that's the closest thing that they could find. Their brains were trying to scramble to find a label for this, and well, beaver and a squirrel, a squeever. There you go. I mean, that's what it looked like to them.
it's as good as sheep squatch, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So I got what they were saying. So if anybody out there is artistically inclined and they could draw some sort of like a scary squeever, that would be hilarious. Like if we could, these two guys, this story from 25 years ago could turn into a new cryptid. Oh my God, that'd be hilarious.
That would be
I would,
amazing. I think that an important question is, though, do you recall if they said, did it have the tail of a beaver or the
I
tail of a squirrel?
I don't recall anything about the tail or if they
Yeah.
even saw it. But yeah, that would you got to know how much beaver and how much squirrel. Like, what's the
Yeah.
ratio here?
Where does one start and the other one end? That's
I just
great.
pictured like a 6 foot tall black squirrel with beaver teeth.
God, can you imagine? Like, you'd never go out in the bush again. You'd be done.
I'd rather see a Bigfoot.
Dude, I'd rather see a pissed off Bigfoot or 10 of them. That's not, no, it's not good. All right, I like this next one because I have a handful and literally just a handful, and I wish I had more. And here's another one. I can't wait to hear this one. This is a Santa Claus story.
So again, something my mom told me this recently. My mom said when she was like 5 or 6 years old, my grandmother was working doing house cleaning, and she had my mom and my two aunts with her, and they were playing outside, I think, while my grandmother cleaned this person's house. Whatever they're playing outside, and my mom said she looked up and she saw Santa Claus and his reindeer fly over top of her in the sleigh. I don't know how high up she saw it. She said, no matter what anybody can tell me, I saw Santa Claus. She said, I know it's not real, but that's what I saw. So I'm trying to tell my mom, I was like, I think you just saw Santa Claus because that's what your brain was telling you. So I think my mom saw like a flying saucer or something. I think she saw something else in her 5-year-old brain
Like,
processed.
you think she has a screen memory of something more
I,
pleasant?
I think that's what it is. Honestly, I do. And like, it's not something I would think, but hearing these, like, so many stories of other people with these same similar things, I think it wasn't Santa Claus.
Okay, well, that's an interesting take on it then.
that's my take, but that also could be me. I'm, with all the things that have happened to me, I'm looking for that familial connection. Like, who else in my
Uh-huh.
family has had these things? And so far, nobody has said, or I've asked, and I haven't got anyone in the family to say that they've had anything UFO or abduction related. But Santa Claus, that might be a screen memory. That could be related, could be not.
As you're talking about this lovely memory that your mom has of seeing Santa Claus, like I could hear music in my earbuds, and I'm like, is that on Chris' side or what? I took one of my earbuds out. There's an ice cream truck going by outside playing creepy ass music. I swear it's now he's back. I'm watching on my ring cam. He's backing up now, playing this god awful music. You know what? Only when I'm recording, I swear. But I've never seen an ice cream truck down this road. But anyway, Santa Claus is like, "It's me, damn it. Don't you give aliens the credit for this." But it that is where I was the second you said that about screen memories. I'm like, well, considering your past, and we're still going to talk about some things coming up, but with sleep paralysis and having the reaction to the hideous, wrinkly faced alien dude, I
It's
mean,
all painting a picture.
maybe, because the thought is that it follows familial lines and all of this, blood type or whatever line you want to draw with that. So I could see where you're kind of going, well, did you see old Santa Claus or was it something else?
It's this whole, like, this is all confusing to me. Like, it's starting to make sense. Like I said, it's painting a larger picture, but I don't know. I'm just trying to figure this stuff out. Every little weird piece needs to get put into this weird puzzle, and maybe at the end we can kind of make sense out of it.
That's all I'm trying to do. I mean, because people get in touch and they go, I need you to give me answers. I'm like, well, I'll tell you right out of the gate, I don't have the answers for you, but we can at least try to, as you say, fit some of the tiny little pieces together and give it our best shot.
Beware anyone who says they have answers.
That is exactly right. Yeah, nail on the head with that one. All right, next we're going to Vaughan, right? Vaughan, Ontario.
Yes. So it's a creepy house. So in my early 20s, I lived in Vaughan, Ontario. It's just a little south of where I was living. I rented this kind of crappy old house. And behind this crappy old house, there's a big old concrete pad. I think at one point in time it was a mushroom farm. So there's this massive, massive concrete pad in the back, and our landlord would rent space on this concrete pad to like construction companies to park equipment and trucks and stuff back there. So there was always like dump trucks and float trailers and excavators. One day, these two houses showed up on like big, huge, wide load float trailers, these two bungalow houses. They were, I'm pretty sure they were identical floor plan, but different looking on the inside. Anyway, these two houses showed up and we went and checked them out. We're like, oh, cool. And because they were off the foundation on these float trailers, you could walk underneath of them. And it was in the kitchen where there would have been a staircase to go to the basement. It was just a hole in the floor now because it was off the foundation. So if you went underneath, you could come up and just kind of climb up into the kitchen. You're like, oh, cool. Abandoned houses. So we checked them out. And I think on the weekend that the week they showed up, we went and like drank some beer and smoked some cigarettes and smoked some other stuff out in this house. And we're like, oh, cool, party house. And then, we'd party in that house the next weekend. One weekend, we're like, oh, well, there's two of them here. We're like, let's go check out the other house. We'd only just gone to the closest one. Well, let's go check out the other one. So we went in. It was like the same thing, climb underneath, up through the hole in the kitchen floor. And it was like the same layout inside. This one just seemed a little bit different. We went into the back bedroom and it had this hideous wallpaper. It's like a black background with a pink floral print. And it was just the most off-putting, gross 90s wallpaper. And you're like, ooh, that's weird. I don't like it. But it felt strange. Like, it kind of gives me the willies. But anyway, we partied in this house in the creepy black bedroom. It was just whatever. I was with myself, my ex girlfriend, her older brother, and a friend of his. So there were four of us. We were, partying, drinking, smoking. I think we had a guitar out there, carrying on, having a good time. I had to go back to our house to go get some more beer because I'd run out of beer. So I figured I'm gonna walk to the house. It was like 150 yard walk across this big concrete pad back to our shitty little house. Walked back and I was wearing my work boots for some reason. Walked back and I figured when I go in the house, my ex-girlfriend's dad was inside sleeping. So I'm gonna go in here and try to be as quiet as I can because I don't want to wake him up. And I gotta go in here and get my beer. Like I had it all planned out. So I got to the front door of the house and my boots were untied. So I kind of stepped my feet out of my boots one at a time so that when I came back outside, like I planned on grabbing a big armful of beer bottles. And when I came back outside, I would be able to step into my boots and, like without having to set my beer down, I could do it with no hands and not make noise and just nudge the door shut and go on my way. So I went inside, stepped out of my boots, went inside to the fridge, grabbed 4 or 6 beers, whatever I could hold in my hands, back outside, closed the door quietly with my elbow, and I went to step into my boots, and my boots were switched left to right. The right foot was on the left side, vice versa. Like I stepped into my boots and I was like, what the hell? They're on the wrong feet. And this had been like 20 to 30 seconds in between me stepping out of my boots and getting the beer, coming back out and stepping back into them. And I was like, huh, that's weird. But I just thought it was one of the other people, like one of my girlfriend's brother or the other guy. I thought they were playing a trick on me. And I was like, oh, you guys, like, ha ha ha, very funny. Switch my boots. Good one. I walked back to this house and like I didn't see any of them outside on this 100-yard walk back to the house. And I get back to the house and they're all inside of it still. Like one guy was playing a guitar and they were singing along. And I was like, oh, did you guys just mess with my boots? And like, what are you talking about? No, we've been in, like, we didn't leave. It's like, well, I said, somebody switched my boots. And like, they genuinely had no idea what the hell I was talking about. And thinking about it after, I was like, well, even if they did do that, like, how would they know what my mental plan of stepping out of my boots and stepping back into them quietly, like, that was in my own head. How would they even have known to do that if they were going to play a trick on me? But it wasn't them. Like, they didn't come out of that house. And there was, in the amount of time that I was in the house and back out, like, there was no time for them to have followed me out or to make it without me seeing and make it back. Like, there was no way. But my boots were in the wrong spot. It's like, well, that's quite strange. So anyway, they denied all knowledge, and it's like, well, it happened, and we kind of didn't really think anything of it. Other than that, we just maybe I was drunk and I forgot what I did, but no, this was completely thought out. Like I knew what I was doing. I was actually quite proud of my little plan in my head. Somehow the boots switched. Going back in this house where they were, there was a bathroom in this house that like we couldn't get the door open. Like we were just sort of exploring. We weren't wrecking anything or vandalizing, but the door of the bathroom wouldn't open. And my ex-girlfriend's brother managed to like force it open, and we saw in the bathroom. And I remember when he opened the door, I just got this thought in my head: someone killed themselves in that bathroom. That was it. I don't know why. It's not something I would have just thought of on my own. It just came into my head. Someone killed themselves in that bathroom. And I was like, I don't think I like this house.
Yeah, the whole boot thing seems very trickster-like to me. You've mentioned that it used to be a mushroom farm, so my head immediately went to, oh, this sounds really Fae-like. Maybe they're upset that the mushroom farm is gone.
Maybe. I'd never thought of it like that. I thought that there was something in that house and it didn't appreciate us going in there and drinking and smoking and carrying on like idiots.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a trickster element to that whole thing. But you having that thought, and again, there's more coming up actually next with this kind of a premonitional psychic kind of an ability. With you having that vision of the suicide, then that's a more likely tie-in, of course, than Faye being pissed off that the mushroom farm is gone.
I don't know why I would have thought that. And we'd lived there for a little while before that. And we lived there for a while after. We actually lived 2 houses down from there for years after that. I'm convinced that it was something in that house and we pissed it off. But I don't know if anything really happened to the others that were there, or, maybe other people aren't paying attention, or other people aren't as sensitive. But I think it was the following day. If it wasn't the following day, then it was 2 days after. The same four of us were out. We were going to go on a day trip to downtown Toronto, and we had to stop on the way uptown. The one fellow that was with us, he had to finish up power washing job he'd been working on, and it happened to be near the subway station, so we were gonna just kind of tag along with him while he finished his little bit of power washing, and then we were all going to go on the subway and go downtown and have a day. So we were in his customer's backyard. It was somewhere, I'm going to say, it was in the Finch and Yonge Street area. Anyone that's in the Toronto area, it was around Finch and Yonge. And the four of us had been sharing a pack of cigarettes that day. And we were kind of hanging around these people's yard, waiting for them to work. And this pack of cigarettes had been sitting on the back railing of this. The deck had like a built-in bench around the outside, and it had this railing. So these cigarettes had sat there all day. Someone would take one and put the package back, like it hadn't moved. We'd been there for a couple hours. The guy finished his pressure washing and put the stuff away in these people's garage, and we're all getting ready to leave. And we walk over to the subway station, and I'm not sure. One of us was like, "Okay, so who's got the pack of cigarettes? Like, I'd like to have a smoke. Who's got the cigarettes?" And none of us had the cigarettes. We're like, "Well, the heck did they go? Because they've been here the whole time." The four of us searched these people's backyard for like 20 minutes, and it was not a large backyard. So we searched everywhere, and we're like, no cigarettes. Like, did they blow away? Did they fall down the crack? Could not find these cigarettes. So we had gone to leave, and I was the last one out of these people's backyard. I closed the gate behind myself, and we were walking down the street, the four of us, and we were actually arguing about which one of us had lost the pack of cigarettes. And we were pissed off, like, at this point, you've been looking for cigarettes for 20 minutes. All you can think about is smoking, and we don't have any cigarettes now. So everyone's getting a little bit heated. I was like, you know what? Forget this. Everyone's just going to yell at each other for a minute. I'm just going to go back and have one last look in this yard. So I turned around, walked the 40 feet back down the sidewalk, opened this gate to these people's backyard. And as soon as I opened the gate, that red pack of cigarettes was on the exact same spot on that railing it had been when we left it there. It's like, well, what the hell? So it turned out good because everybody's tempers kind of flared down, but this pack of cigarettes literally disappeared for 20 minutes.
Yeah, but it or they or he or she could have at least added an extra pack with that one for your troubles.
I think, and so I think that it had to do with this house that we'd partied with my boots being switched. I'm pretty sure this was the very next day. So I'm thinking that this was all tied into this, and whatever was in there, we pissed it off, and it was making a point of letting us know that you pissed me off and I'm going to mess with you.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure, I think there were other small things, more disappearing object phenomena, but I don't know if it was related to that. But I think that trailed off. But that one night, the boots being switched and the cigarettes disappearing was definitely related.
Well, let's talk about Scott, shall we?
All right, Scott. So Scott was a good guy. He was an acquaintance of mine from high school. He was a good friend of a lot of guys that I was good friends with. But I knew him well for the 3 years that I went to high school. I think I was about 21, so a few years out of high school. I had a dream one night, and this was living in Vaughan again. I had a dream that I was talking to a guy from high school that I was friends with. Now, I hadn't spoken to him since high school, but in this dream, I was speaking to a friend. The guy's name was Alex, and I was saying to Alex, "Did you remember this guy, Scott, from high school? He died in a car accident." And that was my dream. That was it. I woke up. It was actually a very strange dream. There was no visual. I didn't see this guy Alex that I was talking to. There was no, I couldn't tell you what the setting was, where I was in this dream. It was just these words, and it somehow I knew that I was talking to this specific person, even though I didn't see him. And that was the extent of it. And I woke up and I was like, well, that's a friggin' weird dream to have. It's a little bit morbid. Like, why would you dream about that? First of all, I haven't talked to either of these guys in 4 or 5 years. And it just makes no sense, but chalk it up to a weird dream. And again, I don't remember if it was the next day. I think it was actually 2 days later. Another friend of mine from high school had stopped by to hang out with my girlfriend and I. And she came over and she's like, "Oh my God, do you remember this guy, Scott? He went to our high school." And I said, "Yeah." She said, "He died in a car accident yesterday." And I was like, "What? For real?" She's like, "Yeah, like you hadn't heard?" And I was like, "No." In my mind, I was like, "Actually, I think I did hear, but I heard it in my dream." I was right shook up about that. Like, still, even talking about this is the weirdest thing to me. I don't, I don't know why a guy who was a mild acquaintance, why I would have a precognitive dream about him dying. I have no idea. I can't find any connection to it, but that's what happened. And that was the one event that opened my eyes the most to the fact that there is something more to this world than what we see with our two eyes.
Can't imagine how
Yeah.
shocking that would be to have happen.
Like I'm trying to think back. I just like disbelief. Like why? It's almost like I can't say because I've never been in a scenario, but it's almost like a weird type of a guilt. Like when people talk about a survivor's guilt, but it's not a survivor's guilt, but it's this weird like, why did I know this? Why was this told to me? Like I just don't get it.
Yeah, it's like something started looking at you a little too close, and you're like, "Why me? Why would I be the one to have this information prior to it happening?" And that's what bigger event than somebody passing away.
I know, and like the guy was the same age as me, so he would have been 20 or 21, like very young.
That's
It
sad.
was,
That is
yeah,
sad, and I can understand why that would really stick with you.
it's you know what? It's something. It's for some reason like it's always in the back of my mind, but not like the back. Like it's always in my mind that like I have dreams about things. And if I have a weird dream, like I get put off. I'm like, was that just a weird dream or is something going to happen now? Like I've had numerous other dreams about other people that I know. I'll have a dream that so and so died, and then I'll be like freaked out for 2 days. And then so and so doesn't die. You're like, okay, cool. It's just a weird dream. A couple of years ago, like I started riding motorcycles. I kept having dreams about dumping the motorcycle in the same two places on the road, like at a certain intersection and a certain part of a road that I would ride like weekly. It started freaking me out. I was like, why do I keep thinking these same things? And like, I keep having a dream about it, or I keep having a thought about it. Ultimately, I ended up getting rid of the bikes because like I just had too many weird feelings about them. And it wasn't a fear thing. Like I actually like motorcycles, and every time I see a cool motorcycle, I'm like, oh sweet, I should get another motorcycle. And then my brain's like, no, you shouldn't. I was like, oh yeah, that's right. Learning to listen to these things. I don't think that I'm special. Maybe some people can do it a little more than others. And like I said, I can't control these things whatsoever. I'm just learning recently to listen to them. Sometimes weird thoughts aren't just weird thoughts. Like the chainsaw thing that I mentioned. I was cutting up a fallen tree just a couple of weeks ago. I was cutting up this tree. It wasn't a big tree. It wasn't a big piece that I was cutting. It wasn't under tension. It was just a limb on the ground. And I was cutting the pieces off of it, and this thought went through my head. You're not wearing your chainsaw chaps because it was hot that day, so I didn't put my chaps on. You're not wearing your chaps. If you hurt yourself right now, you'd have to call your boss, tell him you got hurt, and then you'd miss work because you were hurt. You wouldn't like that. Like this little inner monologue. And within 5 seconds of that thought completing in my head, the chain came off the chainsaw. And like I've used chainsaws for 20 years, and I've never thrown a chain off a chainsaw. Not once has it ever happened to me. And then it happened immediately after having that "you should be careful" thought. So I didn't listen to it. I thought it was just a thought, but also in that 5 second span, I didn't have a lot of time to think, oh man, maybe I should go put my chaps on. It was just, you don't have them on. You should know better. If you got hurt, you wouldn't like it. And then bang, chain came off.
Well, and it's important
So
to mention that the catcher actually, as you say,
the
it did do its job, but
chain catcher did its job.
yeah.
Nothing. The chain didn't hit me. It actually happened so quickly that it didn't even make me jump. It just happened, and I was like, the chain came off. Like it didn't even scare me. It was so quick.
Right.
I was like, oh my god! And the chain catcher caught the chain, and it took a little gouge, and there was a few gouges out of the inside of the sprocket cover. Like so it came back, and it was sharp, but it thankfully the saw did what it was supposed to do. And I don't know why it threw the chain. I had only been cutting for 15 or 20 minutes. My chain tension was like it had been checked. Nothing was done out of the normal other than the fact that I didn't put my chaps on that day.
So let's talk about, since we're on this subject, what happened a few weeks ago at a traffic light then.
With the traffic light, I was just going to get into that. So it was a Friday, and I was driving our Camaro to work. I don't usually take the Camaro to work. I only drive it on weekends. But I thought I'm going to take it in. It's Friday. It's a nice day. And I think that the truck didn't have a lot of gas in it. I was like, oh, perfect chance to take the Camaro to work. So I'm the first car at a traffic light. I see like the cross light goes red, and mine's about to turn green. And just as mine's about to turn green, I get this thought in my head, you better look twice. So I look to my right, and as I look to my right, a car ran the light in my path. To be completely honest, I don't think it was so quick that I probably wouldn't have been that far into the intersection where this car would have actually hit me. If I was, it definitely, like, it wouldn't have been a horrific fatal accident, but it could have been an accident. But I don't think I would have even got out. It's kind of a large intersection. I don't think I would have got out far enough. But the fact is that I thought, look twice, and I looked twice, and a car ran the red light at that second. And it's like, damn, could have racked up the Camaro there. Good thing I looked twice.
I was just going to say, I mean, maybe it would not have been horrific, but a dinged up Camaro would have pissed me off.
It's my least favorite thing. Yeah, so that was a good one. But like I said, just learning to listen to these things. Listen to the inner monologue that you have. Like, I don't know, I assume other people have a little thought. Like, I talk to myself in my brain all day. That's when I was a kid. I actually was like, do other people do this? Am I just weird? I talk to myself, but somehow I like know things are gonna happen, and then they happen. I was like, I think I'm just weird. But no, now 30 some years later, yeah, I think maybe there is something to it, and I should have learned to listen to these things a long time ago.
I mean, you may not have it as strongly as some that I've spoken to, but you definitely have
Something's there.
a precog, a premonitional, a psychic ability, whatever label you want to put on there. You definitely have that.
Like I said, it's completely uncontrollable. I can't do it at will. Or the biggest sign to me, like if I have a thought, like I get these, like just have a random thought, and like if it's something negative, like don't think those things, don't think those things. It's almost like a manifest. Like if you think about too many bad things will happen. Think about good things will happen. So just try not to think about those bad things. But I don't know, when thoughts come into your head, you got to listen to them. You'll trust your gut is absolutely true sometimes.
Now, Chris, before we move on to the sighting in Aurora, Ontario, I would like to go back in this list to the what you titled the severe missing object phenomena, because it ties into the fact that a lot of times people will have sleep paralysis slash maybe kind of sort of abduction scenario going on, plus poltergeist phenomena. And I would deem this maybe more poltergeist type of stuff. So can we talk about that really quickly?
So it was the same house where I had the precognitive dream about the other fella passing away. In that house, like again, I thought I'm going crazy. Like I'd set something down, like I used to smoke. I'd set down a lighter and you'd turn around 2 seconds later and that lighter's not there. Or you'd be writing something, put your pen down to take a swig of your coffee and you turn back and your pen's not there. Or like you're working on something, you set down a wrench and then that wrench disappears. And like this would happen all the time. And I'd be like, I think I'm just losing my I'm not a careful person. I'm too forgetful. I'm a little bit wild. Like I'm always losing stuff. No, these things would just literally disappear. Sometimes something would go missing, like almost right in front of you, and then you'd never see it again, or something could disappear and you'd search high and low, tear your house apart, tear your truck apart. It's not here, and then the next day it shows up in the exact same spot where you knew it was when it disappeared, or things would show back up in a completely they'd show back up in a spot like you'd lose your keys and then you'd find them 2 days later in a spot where you hadn't even been. I'm like, what the hell is that?
So this next thing then, and taking all of that into account, this you actually saw with your own eyes.
Yes, in Aurora, Ontario, small city. I don't know how many people would live there, but it's larger than the town that I live in now. But I was out walking to the store one night. It was summertime. As far as I remember, completely clear sky with a fairly bright full or nearly full moon in the sky. I was walking to the store down the street. And like I've always, like I said, when I was a kid, the Time Life books, UFOs, I've always been interested, always looked at the sky. So looking up, always looking for satellites and stuff, whatever you might see. Walking along, and I see, oh, I can see a satellite. You know, it looks like a star. It's tracking across the sky at typical satellite speed in a straight line. Okay, cool. Check it out and kind of watch them, and then it's from traveling in a straight line. It started going in like a squiggly line and not at the same speed. I was like, well, satellites don't do that. It's like, watch this little dot of light kind of squiggle around and zoom around. Probably lasted for 5 seconds, 10 max, but I'm gonna say 5 seconds between it deviating from its, looking like a satellite to doing this squiggly line scooting around. It went either in front of or behind the moon, like used the moon as a to obscure it. So like I lost sight of it because the moon was bright and this little point of light the size of a star. It either went behind it or in front of it, but I lost sight of it and it didn't appear to come back out from wherever it had gone. These points of light, I actually saw something, and I'm gonna, at risk of sounding like an idiot, I saw this on Reddit. I know Reddit is a lot of bullshit. But a guy I saw on Reddit just the other day, actually, it tied in with this. A guy did like a long exposure photograph of the night sky to do like of meteors, and he got this looked like a point of light that looked like a star, and it just did this like crazy squiggly thing all around on his long exposure photo. And I was like, damn, that looks exactly like the thing that I saw.
I mean, considering up to this point, you've already had all this other stuff going on. It wasn't surprising for me to read that now you've got this UFO sighting.
So yeah, that like always looked, and I was like, I remember telling like the roommates and people I was like, I saw a UFO, and they're like, oh yeah, and I was like, yeah, it looked like a star, and it did this, and they're like, oh, that's cool. I was like, they were totally unimpressed. And I was like, well, I saw it, and I know like I don't know what it was. I can tell you 100 things that it wasn't, but I don't know what it was, and I saw it. So that's that was for me. Like I don't think it was interactive with me, or I don't think it tried to communicate with
Maybe
me
you
in
should
any
try
way.
that though, Chris. Maybe you should try going out, and I'm not saying dive headfirst into CE5, and not that I'm not bagging on those people. I'm just saying, just to go
No.
out and try it, because I have heard of other people that have these kind of quote unquote psychic abilities, or they're sensitive, however you want to term that again, that they can go outside and they can essentially interact or call in,
Mhm.
or, you know, what, just put out the intention that you want
Yep.
to see something and just see what happens.
And that's something when I'd first heard of that years ago, I was like, I don't know, that sounds a little bit wooey for me. Like, as I tell all these wooey stories, I think of myself as a completely straight nuts and bolts kind of guy. And I was like, I don't know, that seems a little bit on the flaky side to me. But actually, you know what? It more recently, as woo woo as it sounds, it's actually starting to make more sense to me. It's like maybe the woo woo is actually not so woo woo.
So have you tried it?
I have not. I've thought about it. I try to meditate and I fall asleep. The only time I have to meditate is like when I'm in my bed and I was like, okay, I'm relaxed, and I try to do like the vibration thing, and I don't think I get very far because I just end up waking up in the morning. I think I'm working on the meditation kind of thing, and I guess if I can get a wrap on that, then sure, I guess I could try some CE5.
You didn't fall asleep. You went to Zeta Reticuli, Chris.
Maybe. Maybe that creepy wrinkly alien.
He can stay wherever the hell he's from, I'll tell you. That's so much nope right there. All right, so now we're going to go to Orangeville, Ontario, and your mom's house. And this is actually where the city that you're in right now, right?
Yep, that's it. Yeah, so I guess this is 10 years ago now. I was living in my mom's got a basement apartment in her house, so I lived in the basement apartment for about 6 months. So one day I was downstairs doing whatever, I don't remember. I heard my mom's doorbell ring upstairs at the front door, and I didn't think anything of it. Like a minute later, she called me. She's like, "Did you just hear my doorbell?" I said, "Yeah." She's like, "Well, somebody just rang the doorbell." She said, I was cleaning up in the house." She said, "I was right by the door. The doorbell rang and I opened it right away and there was nobody there and there was nobody down the street. Like there was nobody out there." I was like, "Oh, that's weird." I don't remember if it was right then or shortly after, but it was that day was the 1 year anniversary of my great grandmother, like my mom's grandmother passed away. So we think that the doorbell was a sign from her. And what made it seem extra weird to me, instead of just somebody doing ding dong ditch, like I said, I lived there for like 6 months. People would use my mom's doorbell, like neighbors would come over or friends would come over and they used the doorbell. And I can't think of any other time, like, you didn't hear it from the downstairs apartment. Like, or if you did, it was extremely quiet, but quiet enough that you probably wouldn't even notice it if you were watching TV or something. But this day, the doorbell was like loud and clear, like it was my own doorbell, is what it sounded like. Mom and I took that as a sign from Graham that she was all right and just wanted to say hello to us that day.
Well, and also if it's a basement apartment, wouldn't there, it was there steps to lead down to the front door, or?
So mom's front door, I guess, yeah, where I would have been, the stairs to go down to the basement apartment are in the back of the house. Like you go around to the back to go down.
Okay.
But where I was downstairs, I would have been close to below where my mom's front door is. But like I said, I can't ever think of hearing it when anybody else would come by. Like it's the only time that I was like, the doorbell rang. I heard it and I was like, oh, doorbell. Like it just didn't register. Like all these things, they don't seem like this. Oh my god! When they happen, right? And so you kind of look back and you're like, huh, that was a little strange.
No, and I like that story because it's just kind of
I,
like you said, it's a
I,
nod. It's a nod from grandma, like I'm
I
okay, I'm cool.
I 100% believe in those, and I think they're a very personal thing. I know there's some stories like that where people give you like a little sign from beyond. They can sometimes not hard to listen to, but they're very personal to the experiencer. But I want to put one more out because it was very personal experience to me, and I think they're helpful for other people that have had a similar one. So a very very close friend of my wife and I passed away just over 3 years ago. She was she was sick and she chose dying with dignity, medically assisted dying. It's a great thing if anybody is in a position where they need that, it is wonderful that that exists for people. So in that process, I learned a lot about it from our friend passing, but you need a legal witness because it's like the doctor's taking somebody's life, right? So it's a whole legal process, and you have to have a witness. So our friend had asked if we would be the witnesses for this so that she could do this, and we, of course, we would love to help you. So part of being a witness is that you actually have to physically be on site the day that it happens. Like you're a part of the whole process. Anyway, we were there with our friend Emily and her daughter and her husband and the doctor that was amazing, and she had a wonderful passing. My wife and I stuck around after the whole thing. I guess it's the coroner comes or the funeral home, whoever comes, and they take the person away and all that sort of end of life stuff happens. So we stuck around at the house with the lady's husband right until, like she was gone, she was off. We saw the whole process through for her. We were there, and when it was done, her husband said, "Thanks. You guys have helped us, but you can go now. You're excused from your duties," kind of thing. And we said goodbye to him, got in the truck, and we were driving down her road. It's a countryside road. It's a paved road, but a countryside road. So less than a mile from leaving their driveway, I was driving down the road. A blue heron just kind of came out of sky or came out of somewhere, swooped down, kind of flanked my truck, and glided along beside my truck for probably 30 seconds. This thing just kept pace. I was driving fairly slow, but this thing just kept pace along the side of the road at like eye level height pace with my truck. And I looked at it and I was like, look at that, and acknowledged it. And it felt like it acknowledged us. And then it kind of veered off and flew off and did its blue heron thing. When Emily was alive, birds, she loved birds. I love birds. It was something we always bonded over. And when she was sick, the bird feeder was one of her largest sources of entertainment. So I'd put up a bird feeder for her, always kept the birds fed, always made sure the birds were happy because her and I loved the birds. Blue herons had always been my favorite bird. She knows that. And to have this blue heron fly alongside my truck right after she was gone, and kind of like it we acknowledged it was like I gave the bird a head nod and the bird head nodded me back, and all's well. And the bird, we went our separate ways, and that was that. I absolutely know that was her.
Yeah, it's another nice story of a sign. Another nod. So I always like those stories.
Yeah, it was a good one. I actually have a tattoo of a blue heron for her because of that whole experience. That's my not that I would ever forget it, but it's always there. It's part of me now. I also have my most recent tattoo. I got a guy getting hauled up into a flying saucer.
Uh-oh.
A little bit of satire, a little bit
Yeah.
of not so much satire.
You're telling the aliens, I see you, MFers.
Yeah.
I know what you're up to.
The next time they pick me up, they're going to get a kick out of this.
Yeah. Like, you are not so sly, you guys. Screw you. Yeah. All right, so let's talk about a little bit more poltergeist activity, but this is in your current apartment right now, these next few stories.
So, yeah, we've lived in this apartment for 8 years, my wife and I. And when we first moved in here, like we'd be in bed at night. It's a 2-bedroom apartment. I think it's like an 800 square foot apartment, not very big, but it's not a tiny apartment. So the kitchen's at the other end. And we'd be in bed at night and you'd hear like the sound of utensils moving in the sink, like whether there were or there weren't utensils in the sink at the time, we would hear this noise. It almost sounded like when you're doing the dishes and the knives and forks and stuff kind of slosh across the bottom of the stainless steel sink. And we're like, do you hear that? Like, what the hell is that? And we'd hear it. You'd hear it like almost nightly. Sometimes you wouldn't hear it for a bit, and you'd hear it. How is that? Sounded like something was in the kitchen, but eventually we rented the kitchen, and I took the stainless steel sink out. We have like a ceramic granite something sink, but it doesn't make the same noise, but those noises stopped. So I don't know if it was the noises stopped because we got rid of the sink, or if it had stopped before the renovation. I can't say for sure, but I don't know, like it was, those distinct sounds in your house, right? You hear something and you're like, that is the noise of this. So it was utensils in our sink. We hear it all the time. Another one didn't mention was we'd hear the noise of like a chair, like a wooden chair or something, and somebody doesn't pick their chair up and they just slide it. It makes that god awful chair noise on the floor. Hear that once a night. I would hear somebody pull a chair, like just that quick. I'd be like, oh, it's so annoying. I was always blaming my neighbor. So one day I was talking to the neighbor, and he said something about pick your damn chair up. And I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, you're always sliding your chair around in the middle of the night. It's so loud. And I was like,
Oh,
that's you.
weird.
He's like, I don't do that. I don't have one of those chairs. I was like, well, I don't have a wooden chair either.
You guys are both blaming each other. That is so strange. And also, only once a night for both of you, this would happen.
I guess it was, yeah, I'd hear it once a
Wow.
night. I assume him as well. But like, that one, like living in an apartment building, sounds, you can only give so much credit to sounds because like the
Right.
way sound travels and things vibrate, and it could have been somebody else's chair. But I've also heard other stories of that specific same chair noise in like a house where there's only one person in that house and they hear that chair noise. Really, that I'd always blame the neighbor, and he'd always been blaming me.
Was it the same time every night?
I don't know. He just happened to mention it. Pick your damn chair up. You're always sliding your chair around. So yeah, there's those things. But like I said, noises. The kitchen sink one, like that noise came from our kitchen. The chair from the other side of the wall, that one I can't say 100%. It could have been, it could have been somebody below us. That's very possible.
Well, it's funny, the renovation aspect of the kitchen sink, a lot of times,
Goes
usually,
to,
the renovations will actually kick things off, not end
yeah,
it.
yeah. So it was like I realized that too, and it's like when I typed that, I was like, hey, usually it goes the other way. I was like,
Yeah.
so was it actual? Like, I'm trying to think now. Like, I'm sure we would hear that noise regardless of whether there were dishes or not in the sink. When I was thinking that, I was like, well, if it was actual poltergeist and it was physically moving the dishes that were in the sink, that would that would make sense why it doesn't make that noise anymore. But at the same time, would it not push the utensils around in the new sink? Like, I don't know. I have no idea. But we could hear it.
Well, and I mean, so between the chair and the utensils in the sink, my initial reaction was, oh, they have some residual type stuff going
That's
on. However, and I
that's
don't
what
know
I'm
if you want to
thinking.
talk about Charlotte first or if you want to talk about this first. I was referring to the fact that your wife, Dawn, sees shadow people, and this doesn't seem as residual as it does
No.
interactive.
So the shadow people. My wife sees shadow people in the apartment regularly, not nightly, but quite regularly. And as far as I know, it's all in the nighttime or almost all at nighttime. So I think years ago, we'd watched one of those paranormal investigation shows on TV, and they were talking about shadows and, like black masses and stuff like that. And she's mentioned one day, she's like, I've seen that. I was like, really? When? She's like, I saw one go down the hallway and into our bathroom. And I was like, what are you talking about? When? So she told me, I guess it wasn't that long ago. This was 6 or 7 years ago. And I was like, what? And she's like, yeah, I see things like that. Like I've seen things like that before, like when I was a kid and different places that we've lived. I was like, really? Huh. I thought I was the only one that thought about weird stuff like that. But so she just calls them the
Oh, you got Chris. I don't know what just happened, but I can't barely hear you at all.
shadows.
Oh my gosh. Wow. What in the world just happened?
I haven't
Oh, I got to leave part of this in. That's really strange, just so that people can hear this. Do me a favor
moved. Yeah,
and, oh, wait, you might be back.
maybe.
Okay, you're back. That was very strange. Anyways, thanks, Shadow folks. We know you're around. Okay. See,
Here.
and this kind of a thing, and I know you will keep in touch with me, obviously, but I'm just wondering now, especially since this is your current apartment we're talking about, and now whatever the hell that just happened. Let me know if something goes down after this discussion. But I'm sorry.
Absolutely.
So continue.
Sorry. Yes. So my wife she calls them the shadows. So she says it looks like the shadow of a person. It's darker than the darkness. I was trying to ask her one time. I was like, does it look like a person with a hat? She says, no, it looks like a robe or a cape. A person with a hood and a robe, or a hood and a cape, something like that, like a flowy, not a hat man, something more along the lines of like a monk robe is what she says it looks like. But so from our bedroom, like she'll see them. I think it's always just one at a time, but it'll pace back and forth in the hallway outside the bedroom door. And she said sometimes like she'll wake up in the night and she'll have to go to the bathroom, but it'll be pacing back and forth in the hallway. And she's like, like, would you get out of the hallway? Like, I have to go to the bathroom. Just piss off for a minute and let me go. And it'll pace back and forth. And she doesn't like to get out of bed when it's there. Other times, she says it'll stand right in the doorway of our bedroom, like we sleep with our door open. And it'll just stand in the doorway, like in the door frame or inside of the bedroom, close to the bed. She said it started doing that, like, I don't know, I got all as metaphysical as I knew how, and put these little quartz crystals that I found in the four corners of our room, and a little gold cross, which I don't really put a whole lot of faith, no pun intended, into, but that over the doorway, and it seemed to actually subside this for a little bit, but it actually didn't really work because the shadows still come in the bedroom. It just stopped them from coming in the bedroom a little bit. They'll come in the bedroom. She says they'll stand at the foot of the bed, or they'll stand at my side of the bed. Through all of this, I have never once seen a shadow, black mass, shadow person. None. I am dead to the world, and she's unable to wake me up whenever any of this is going on. But she just, like, I guess it's kind of scary, but at the same time, it's just as annoying to her. I remember just a few weeks ago, she said, I had to go pee in the night, and the shadow thing kept standing in the hallway. And she's like, eventually, when it walked down the hallway, I just got up and ran for the bathroom, peed as fast as I could, and then came back out before it came down the hall again. I was like, damn, baby, you're braver than me.
Yeah, no kidding. And that sucks, by the way. And it pacing back and forth is, I mean, besides it just being there, that's very creepy.
I'm glad I don't see them because I don't think I've tried to. Like, I'll stay awake as long as I can, and like I just fall asleep.
But here's the thing, Chris, and bear with me for a minute as I work through this, because here's where to me the lines get very blurred between phenomena. Okay, because right now technically we're talking about a shadow figure, a shadow person, which I get the blacker than black. I've seen them myself.
Yep.
But okay, she sees this thing and it's scary. Of course, it should be. She tries to wake you up and cannot. So here's where the line gets blurred for me, because on your side of things, and I'm pretty sure you know where I'm going with this, you got this alien stuff, you got the poltergeist stuff, you got all of these things going on, UFOs. Now, when you're talking about you essentially being quote unquote shut off to where she can't wake you, nothing she can do will wake you. Now we're talking more of what would be termed an alien abduction scenario, because we hear time and time again a spouse is laying right next to somebody while they are being quote unquote taken, and they're screaming or yelling or hitting or whatever the spouse, and they're not waking up. So what are we supposed to make of that?
I know. So lately, like in the last 3 years, when I've really got into podcasts like yours, and specifically the true accounts, like firsthand accounts, is the thing that interests me the most. I have, like, all this stuff, like I said, it wouldn't even seem paranormal to me, most of it, other than the fact that I hear dozens of people with the same kinds of stories. And then I started laughing. The shadows. I was like, oh my god, they're not your ghosts. They're my aliens.
Right.
I was like, it's so funny, and it all ties together. And yeah, what the whole phenomenon, and it also kind of goes like, I think people that are into this sort of thing and pay attention to it and listen to these things, I think we know that these things are all related in somehow, in some way. And then having this, like the Dave Grush thing, he said, what's the biggest mistake people can make is thinking that this is all extraterrestrials or that it's all one thing. It's not. And I think that's very, very true. Like it's all tied together somehow. And it's just as soon as you think something makes sense, you get a trickster element thrown at you or something like a friggin' wolf in sheep's clothing, literally. Like,
Yeah, literally in one case at least. No,
what
but
do
like
you find
when
that under?
like
Like,
when you're in this quote unquote shut off state, is that when you're aboard a craft or something and you just don't remember? I mean, I know I'm like way reaching
yeah,
and just saying crazy stuff, but I'm just saying.
no, that's totally, and these are the things that, other people, like I said, I've never seen anything in a sleep paralysis state. I haven't had sleep paralysis in 25 years. I've never seen anything. I've never seen an alien. I can't say, I was on a craft. I can't say any of those things because I don't remember any of that stuff, but it's all just making too much sense together. Like all these things are too close to other people's theories. And yeah, like maybe this is happening. And some people remember, some people don't remember at all. Maybe I'm somewhere in the middle.
Maybe that's a good thing because some of the things that people do remember isn't so nice. Now I have to ask this: do you have any strange marks that you've always thought, that's kind of weird on your body anywhere?
Um, yeah, okay. So I'm going to mention this, and whether you leave this in the show or not is up to you because this may be inappropriate, and I didn't put it in my email because it may be inappropriate, and I'm very hesitant to even say it. But I guess in the last 6 months, I've noticed on my personal area, 2 freckles have appeared that were never there. They're not warts. Everybody laugh. These 2 identical small freckles, 90 degrees, like space centered. Like it's very not natural looking. And it just appeared one day. Those were never there before. And now they are. And they're still there. I don't know what to make of it. I guess you can, if it was one, I'd never think of it. You can, a freckle, a spot on your skin changes as you grow and get older and stuff. But 2 identical spots, like equal distance side to side on that area of my body. Like, well, what the hell is that now? The hybrid, the breeding program, things like that people theorize about. I was like, great, now I get this.
Yeah, and you're like, of all places, thank you.
Yeah, you could have just asked for it. There's such a thing as consent, but
Not in their minds, I don't
not that
think.
I would have
Not from
given
what
it,
we're
but
hearing. No, I do appreciate you bringing that up because it's noteworthy.
it is, and that's what I thought. But at the same time, like the day and age that we live in, you can't be going and telling strangers about your personal areas. That's not always
Right.
acceptable. But whether that's at your discretion. It's there. It's true.
Oh no, I'm going to leave that in. I mean, listen, they're listening to this show. They've heard plenty of things that if they're easily offended, they shouldn't be listening anyway because of the topics that get covered. But no, I think that's important to mention.
Okay, fair enough.
No, I appreciate you doing that.
Okay, thank you.
Did they? Okay, so then and if I'm getting too far into something, you just tell me I don't want to talk about that. Does it? I mean, did they bother you? Is or is it just something you just physically can see and you're like, that's new?
Yeah, that's it. It doesn't. Yeah. It's not raised. It's not a bump. There's no. It's just 2 tiny dots on the skin.
I mean, honestly, Chris, because the most poignant thing that sticks out in my mind, especially since these are some of the more recent events, that whole thing with you being in bed and she's got this asshole essentially walking back and forth in the hallway, and they love the hallways and the basements and the attics. But for her not to be able to wake you, I don't know what to make of that. It's not anything good.
It's so cliche, right?
But it is. But okay, how committed is she trying to wake you up? Does she say, I'm poking you in your shoulder, or is she like, Chris?
No, she's like, whacking you, shaking you, grabbing you, poking you, saying,
Really?
wake up, it's right there.
Oh
And I'm
man.
just unresponsive. But that,
That's I mean, are
I don't
you
have trouble sleeping. I'm a pretty good at sleeping. So that could just be me. But at the same time, as much as I can sleep like a log while she's poking and shaking me, there's other times, like just a few weeks ago, I woke up 3 nights in a row. We have like the alarm clock with the projector, so
Mhm.
it shines on the wall. I woke up 3 nights in a row at 3:16,
Mm.
3 nights in a row. And then I was like, that's weird. And then 2 nights in a row after that, I woke up at exactly 4:19. And I was like, that's just the same, like to the minute, 3 days in a row, and then a different time, but to the minute, 2 nights in a row. I mean, what the hell's up with that?
Oh God, and here we are talking about it, which usually kicks things off too.
So, like
Mm,
I said, I don't. It's not scary to me because I don't see things. Like whatever is going on, I don't seem to see or experience it in that
your
way.
poor
So I
wife
don't.
does though. I mean, what if
And
and I wonder if you woke up, would you see the shadow figure with the cloak, or would you see something else, right? At the same
yeah,
time that she's seeing this.
I don't know. But yeah, it's all like, there's that happens, right? Two people see the
Yeah.
same thing at the same time, and each of the two people says they saw something completely
I
different.
mean, that's the thing out of the movie that Sam Shearon he hates, but the fourth kind, the whole that's not an owl thing. Someone's like,
Yeah,
that's, oh, look at the owl, and the other person's like, that's not an owl, because they don't see a freaking owl. It's something else to them.
yep, yep.
So
And that the owl theme, like I've heard that. It doesn't. I like owls. I think they're cool, but I can't say that owls are a recurring theme to me. Like it hasn't come up, or at least that I've noticed.
well, if you see one outside your window tonight, just make sure to, I don't know,
Yeah,
sage the entire house, and I don't even know, because that has really dark implications to me. That whole, what your wife's going through, and then she can't wake you up. That's not good. That's not cool. When's the
uh,
last
uh,
time that whole scenario went down for her?
shadows. I'm gonna say, a month and a half ago was probably the last time she
Okay.
mentioned to me. It was in the hallway again. Stupid shadows were back. Like she's just annoyed with it. Like I'm sure it is.
Right.
It is scary, but she says she's seen them her whole life. So it's not just connected to me, but is it partially connected to me? Is there a reason that her and I are together after having different phenomena in our lives before that? Like, I just don't know. Every time you try to answer a question, you just end up with more questions.
Yeah, the
I think
second you try to grip on something, it just bloop, right out of your
that's
hand, just
yeah.
and I was going to save this question for the very end, but it applies because of what you just brought up. But so if the theys, and heavy air quotes here, if the
Yeah.
theys, whoever they are, do you think that they essentially gave you these psychic gifts, or were they attracted to you because of them?
I do not know, and I've thought of that. It's the chicken egg thing, right? And that's
Mm-hmm.
because I've heard of these mild psychic abilities with other people that have had possible encounters with UFOs, paranormal, alien type things. I've heard of this. Like, well, like I couldn't tell you. Did it come first? Did it come after? I I'm not sure, but it's definitely seems to be related. That's all I can figure at this point.
Couple more things with you, right? Can we talk about Charlotte?
Yes, Charlotte was the absolute greatest dog ever. Charlotte was my pit bull. My ex-girlfriend and I got her when we were teenagers, and she was 13, almost 14 years old when she passed. So Dawn and I had her here at the apartment with us. Just like in the couple of days after she passed, we had another dog, Daisy. Daisy actually just passed recently. But in the days after Charlotte passed, Dawn and I were in the living room, and Daisy, the other dog, was out there with us, and we heard that toenails on hardwood parquet floor noise. Like it sounded like Charlotte just trotted down the hallway, and the two of us, like Dawn and I, looked, and the other dog like looked down the hallway. Like all three of us were like, what? Kind of craned our heads and we're like, that was dog toes. Like we all heard it and Daisy confirmed it. Like, huh. And I'm pretty sure that like within a week of her passing, pretty sure that we heard the dog toes twice in the house. So that was nice to know that she's around us, or she was at least around us. When Charlotte was alive, she was one of these dogs that like you hear so many people. The dog that stares up in the corner and follows something back and forth with her eyes that's not there. Like she would do that all the time in this apartment and in the other houses that I lived in. She'd always, you're looking at, do you see a fly? Do you see a cobweb? This dog is intent on something, but there's nothing there. And actually, in this apartment, one time she went down the hallway. Charlotte came down the hallway barking, like losing her mind about something that, like, we couldn't see what it was, but she was quite angry about something in this hallway.
Well, what about at night? I don't know what the situation was with who was around when, but what about at night when these shadow a-holes or the one would be around? Would they ever interact at night with that?
Not that I can think of. And like, so we have one dog now, and we had like just up until recently, we did have two dogs. And when these things would go on, like we had a bulldog, you could hear her snoring, like she never knew anything that was going on. And the other little dog, he never seemed to be bothered by anything. And he sleeps in our bedroom now, and he seems fine at night. He gets up, he'll kind of go between his bed in the bedroom and his bed in the living room. Nothing seems to really bother him. But that one time Charlotte was angry about something, some invisible something. She was pissed right off, which she was she was a pit bull, a very happy-go-lucky, typical pit bull. And then this one day, whatever she saw, she did not like.
Well, last but not least, we have a light in the sky story.
One more light in the sky. So this was last year. I think it was in July or August, like just over a year ago. So same place, the apartment building here where we live. I was out on the front yard of the building taking one of the dogs out or both of the dogs out. I was outside with dogs and doing my typical, I'm outside, so I'm looking up at the sky. I looked up and I saw it didn't look like a star. It was larger and brighter than a star and sort of an amber color, kind of like, I'm not as much as I stare at the sky, I'm not really great with astronomy, but like when you see a planet or something, they're kind of a yellowy, orangey, ambery shade rather than the whitish blue of a star. So I see this light and I was like, that doesn't look completely familiar, but it's a light in the sky. So I'm kind of looking at this slightly brighter than the other stars. I'm just kind of watching it as the dogs do their thing in the yard there. The sky was kind of mostly clear, but it had some wispy clouds, and it was actually a fairly breezy night. And I was looking at this amber light. A cloud blew, like I'm gonna say, like probably fairly low level altitude cloud, blew across in front of me, and like between me and this light, star, planet, whatever it was. And so like I lost sight of it because this little wispy cloud blew in between and obscured the light behind it. And I stood there and I was watching this cloud as the breeze carried it past. And like, okay, so this little amber light should appear any second now when this cloud blows past. And the cloud passed by, but the amber light wasn't there after the cloud passed. I was like, what the hell? Where did it just go? Like it wasn't moving. It was stationary when I saw it, but it somehow disappeared when this cloud passed across it. And I was like, what? And then I started looking at this wispy cloud as the breeze is carrying it away. And I swear that this cloud looked like it had television static inside of it. This little sparkly, ripply, like it wasn't bright, but it wasn't just a plain cloud at night. It had some kind of like a shimmery effect to it. Like, what the frig was that? It's like, that's weird. So I came that time, I was like, that was definitely something strange. I told Dawn, she's like, oh yeah, cool. So I'm like, okay, whatever. I know what I saw.
I mean, that one is cool, right? Because it's the whatever this quote unquote light was, it knew it had some cover, so it just stayed behind the cover.
It seemed to use that cover, same as the first light that I saw seemed to use the moon as cover.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so this one with the TV static, I was like, that's weird. And I was like, I'm second guessing myself, right? I'm like, okay, I think maybe you're crazy. Maybe you're staring too hard at shit in the dark. Just got to chill out a little bit here, maybe. And then within a week, I was listening. I'm going to plug another show, but I was listening to Derek Hayes' show, Monsters Among Us, and a guy called in and had like an almost identical story about a cloud obscuring a light in the sky and the cloud looking like TV static. And I was like, no shit. It's like, well, maybe I'm not crazy.
Well, that was probably really cool to hear then.
It was, and that's, that's one of the things why I think that firsthand accounts, people sharing their accounts is so important, because I think a lot more people see things than admit to seeing things. And even if people don't want to come forward with their own experience, the fact that somebody else does and gives you a bit of validation in your own mind, that might give people the confidence to come forward.
Yes.
And like, these things need to be talked about. We're not going to learn anything if it's all cuckoo talk and nobody gives you the time of day. Like, these things happen. People see these things. Like, we don't know what they are, but they happen. Have it validated by another call, like within a week or two. I was like, no way, that's so cool.
Well, especially, I'm sure, when he said the two words TV static, you probably lost your mind.
Yeah, I was like, no way, that's it.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
I wonder what would come out, and I'm not saying that you should do this, and I know that a lot of people think it's a very nefarious thing. It could be. I'm not a proponent for or against it. I'm just saying. Another phrase I've used too much probably in this episode, there we go, is hypnotic regression. I just wonder if you tried that, what would come out.
I've thought of it. Actually, I think it was within the last couple of years. I think I did a quick Google search to see if there's even anybody around this area that does that kind of stuff. And I guess in Toronto, there are doctors that will do that, but I don't know what it costs or what all's involved in it.
Well, and really what it costs, you know what I'm saying? Like, what is it going to cost you mentally after you go through it?
No, and it's like, as much as I do, like the Betty and Barney Hill, like, I absolutely believe that is what they believe they saw, but what did, like, where's, I don't know. I think some regressions or some hypnosis can be led. I think some may be legitimate. I don't know, and I don't want to be led, and I don't want something to be sensationalized or made out to be something that it's not. I'm not sure how I feel about it. I've thought about it, but I'm not sure if I would actually go through with it, or if I did go through with it and I got some tall tale about spaceships and aliens and getting poked with things, would I even believe it after? Would I believe my own regression, or would I think that I may have just been led because somebody else is telling me this?
Or maybe you were just saying that out loud because that's what you were afraid was happening the whole time, even though it's maybe not.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. But I mean, at least you're admitting, yeah, I actually have thought about doing that. So that's understandable. I would too.
I'm not sure how much stock to put into it. Like even with this whole thing in the last 2-3 years, starting to put these things together. Like, I joke with my friend, I say, like, there's a 70% chance that I've been abducted by aliens. She laughs, and then I forget something else happened. And I was like, I'm going to put it up to 80% now.
See, but, I mean, and you're kind of laughing about that because what else are you supposed to do? But that's how you feel, right? You feel that way.
Yeah. So if that's what happens, if I don't know and that's what's happening, I guess there's nothing I can do about it. And if I don't know and it's like I'm not traumatized by it, then I guess what's it really?
Then why poke the bear, right?
Yeah, if that's what's going on and I'm still a happy, healthy person, then I guess that's just life. I don't know.
Right.
I'm not sure. I have no idea. And like, yeah, you hear these stories and like, I believe that other people have seen these things. I believe that this has happened to other people, but at the same time, I was like, I don't think that I've been on board a spaceship. And then like, I'm thinking about it. I'm like, well, if I believe that this happens to other people, like I 100% believe their story.
then I guess I have to believe that it could happen to me as well. Like, I can't say that it did. Like I said, I've never seen these things, never had these feelings. It's just so many factors adding all together. And then there are like the tangible things like precognitions of people dying and stuff. Like that's real. That can be substantiated. That happened. But just putting them all together, like, it's just there's too many similarities to too many other people.
I mean, I don't know if you've caught this episode yet, but episode 413, The Phenomena Follows with Michael Cameron, his is very similar, a lot of similar things going on there. But his is just, and he admits it. He's like, mine is off the charts negative. It has affected every aspect of my life. I hate it. I wish and here's the thing. The difference between the knowing and the not knowing is all the difference, right? Yeah. The difference between actually poking that bear and not that I'm saying he did. I'm just saying he has more knowledge of what has gone on in the periphery or in the background than you do, and that obviously can be a very good thing.
And if I'm pretty sure that was just a recent episode, if it's the one I'm thinking of, and I think that did he mention about military abductions?
Yeah, and we haven't even touched on that, and we're going to be talking about that probably on a Patreon live chat, but get this, we only barely grazed upon that, and I've been messaging with him, and he's had, I'm going to say, a physical manifestation after our conversation, which is still ongoing right now, which he's dealing with. So, and to him, he's like, that was a repercussion of discussing it.
You know what, and I'm aware of that. I've emailed things like certain stories about shadow people like here and there, and like if I talk about this, Dawn should probably see them tonight.
Well, and that's why, and I know, like I said, I'm pretty sure you will because you already got in touch with me, but I would like to know straight away if something goes down.
I will do it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I really, really would. But Chris, I appreciate all your time today on this lovely Saturday. I'm sure you're probably like, okay, would like to get up off the phone now. But thanks for sharing all of this.
No, thank you so much for having me. I really, really appreciate it. And if anybody else is on the fence about contributing, like, please, you've got nothing to lose. It's a great experience. And the more we talk about this, the more maybe one day we'll learn something. I also think that maybe one day we won't, because we're all just humans, and maybe humans aren't meant to know these things. It's part of the game. It's part of the test. That could be it too. Like, we just don't know.
Well, if we make it through today, we meaning the whole human race, if the world doesn't end yet again on another, whatever it is, I don't know what the hell the 923 is thing. I know it was big on TikTok. I'm not really on TikTok, but yeah, because people can only consume like 90 seconds of content with their attention span. But hey, if we get through today and something goes down tonight, just email me. I'd love to hear about whatever's going down with you guys. And for Dawn's sake, I hope they just piss the hell off.
Just leave her alone. She just needs to go to the bathroom at night. Leave her alone.
She does sound tough, though. Can I just say, because holy crap, like she would get up anyway and just try to beat him to the door. Like, that's so cool.
She was telling me that, and I'm laughing because I was like, that's crazy. It's funny that you're trying to like bust your way past a ghost or go behind his back or like whatever this is. It's so funny, but at the same time, like, damn, it's actually kind of scary. But
it's horrifying.
I don't think I'd be that brave if I saw them myself. Like, I don't know what I would think. So I really don't know.
Well, obviously, you're not meant to see them, at least not in that form.
That's fine with me.
Right? Poor Dawn. She has to see him like every week, and she's like, "Hey, Chris, thanks for waking up, buddy. Appreciate you."
If she sees Santa Claus tonight,
oh God, yes, yeah. If there's like reindeers trotting down around the complex, and then Santa Claus is in the hallway, we really need to talk, okay?
Then I'll get regressed.
Yeah. If we need to start a GoFundMe and find the best regressionist on the planet, we will do that. It's like $1,000 an hour. Whatever he is, we will pay
I'd
it.
be down.
Well, Chris, thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Shannon.